While manufacturers push brand new semis for $180,000, there's a small group of trucks that the mechanics who know them best refuse to let go, not because they're cheap or easy to find, but because the engines inside them were literally engineered to run 1 million miles. And here's what should make you stop scrolling. Those engines don't exist anymore. They were phased out, not because they failed, because they worked too well. 7 specific semi-trucks, 7 specific engines, and a used market that's been quietly telling the truth for 30 years, with its wallet. A 1999 Peterbilt can sell for more than a 2010 model. A Kenworth with a Cat engine can cost the same as a new truck and outlast it by 250,000 miles. We're going through all 7, from the most important down to the most undervalued. By the end, you'll know exactly why the old iron is still the smart money. The Freightliner FLD120 in Classic XL, paired with the Detroit Series 60, the best-selling Class 8 engine in North America through the 90s. Daimler owned both brands, controlling the entire powertrain end-to-end. The Series 60 was the first heavy-duty diesel built from scratch with full electronic control. 12.7 liters, later 14.0, up to 515 horsepower. Detroit Diesel's official time between overhaul target was 1 million miles, an engineering specification, not a marketing line. Documented cases reached 1.4 million miles with nothing beyond headwork. These trucks sell today for $15,000 to $35,000. Full rebuild kit, $3,000 to $6,000. Compare that to a new truck at $180,000 with an EGR system failing before 300,000 miles. If you didn't know the Series 60 was literally designed to hit 1 million miles, that it was a spec, not a slogan, hit that like button. Because there are 6 more trucks on this list, and the next one has been in continuous production for over 60 years without a complete redesign. The Kenworth W900 has been in production since 1961. Over 60 years, no full platform redesign, just refinement. The only truck in the industry that can make that claim. The W900L's long hood gives you more engine space and better cooling headroom. Pair that with the Caterpillar 3406E, 14.6 liters, up to 1,850 pound-feet of torque, managed by Cat's ADAM system. And you have what truckers call pulling forever. These trucks trade today for $25,000 to $55,000 in solid condition, with 500,000 to 800,000 miles on the clock. Modern trucks. Dealers report 15,000 to 30,000 in DPF and SCR repairs as routine. And Cat's exit from the highway engine market in 2010? That story gets darker. We'll get there. Produced from 1987 to 2007, the Peterbilt 379 didn't end because it was done. It ended because emissions compliance would have required becoming something else entirely. With the Cat 3406E or Cummins N14 under the hood, it is the undisputed king of the million-mile club. Inside owner-operator communities, nobody asks whether a well-maintained 379 can reach 1 million miles. The conversation is about how many are doing it right now. One verified case, original block, 2 million miles, still working. The EXHD extended hood delivers maximum cooling and full engine access. Market value runs from $30,000 to $80,000, with exceptional examples clearing $100,000. A truck from 1999 that appreciates. No new truck appreciates. That says everything. Here's what most people miss. Why these engines last when everything else doesn't. 3 engineering fundamentals documented by the SAE. First, displacement to output ratio. The N14 makes 450 horsepower from 14 liters, 32 per liter. Modern turbo diesels push 50 or more. Lower specific output means lower cylinder pressure, less stress per cycle. Second, wet sleeve liners. The cylinder sits in direct contact with coolant, pulling heat away efficiently. And you can rebuild to factory tolerances in the same block multiple times. Third, electronic injection precision. The DDEC Select and Atom controlled timing and fuel quantity with tolerances that eliminated fuel wash and prevented detonation, a direct contributor to extended overhaul intervals. This is not legend, this is applied tribology. The International 9900i ran from 1999 to 2007. International's attempt to compete in the long hood segment owned by Peterbilt and Kenworth, rarer, fewer units, less collector presence. Here's the detail that tells the whole story. Buyers specifically ordered the 9900i without International's own engine, paying a premium for a Cummins N14 or CAT in an International chassis. A vote of no confidence built into the order sheet. The N14 Select Plus, 14 liters, 310 to 525 horsepower, with documented rebuild intervals of 800,000 to 1.2 million miles. You find them today for $20,000 to $45,000. Same engine, lower price. For the owner-operator who doesn't care what's on the hood, this is where the value is. If this is the kind of information that would have saved you real money, subscribe right now. We're not done. 3 more trucks, and the last one on this list might be the most undervalued of all. The International story doesn't end with the 9900i. It gets worse. In the 2010 to 2012 period, International was installing its MaxxForce EGR engines across its lineup. What followed was one of the most catastrophic reliability failures in American heavy trucking history. Class action lawsuits, hundreds of millions in warranty claims, engines failing at scale. The same company that had been selling a solid chassis with a borrowed Cummins was now installing its own engine. The 9900i with an N14 is the before picture. The MaxxForce era is the after. The Volvo VNL never announced itself. Introduced in 1996, it brought a Scandinavian philosophy to American highways: durability over maximum output, refinement over brute force. The D12, 12.1 liters, up to 500 horsepower, was built entirely in-house. No Detroit, no Cummins, no CAT. Wider oil galleries and more conservative bearing tolerances than American competitors of the same era meant D12s on Volvo's schedule consistently outlasted equivalent engines. Million-mile examples are documented. The VNL also carried a European stigma that suppressed used market value 15 to 25% below equivalent Kenworth or Peterbilt iron. Today, old generation VNLs trade for $20,000 to $50,000. Let's put the math on the table. A pre-emissions classic, a Peterbilt 379 with a 3406E, runs $40,000 to $70,000 used. A new 2024 truck costs $150,000 to $200,000. DEF fluid alone runs 5 to 10 cents per mile, up to $100,000 over 1 million miles. Zero on a pre-emissions engine. An SCR or DPF failure puts a modern truck in limp mode at 3 in the morning in Wyoming with a load due yesterday. A Series 60 throws a warning light and keeps pulling. Owner-operators across OIDA and truckers report estimate saving $10,000 to $25,000 per 500,000 miles by staying pre-emissions. And the truck coming up next is the one mechanics call built like a Mack truck, because it literally is. Built like a Mack truck has been in the American language since the 1930s. Merriam-Webster made it official. That doesn't happen by accident. Mack was one of the only American manufacturers to design, build, and install its own engine. The E7, 12 liters, 250 to 454 horsepower. Unit injectors mechanically actuated off the camshaft. Simpler, more consistent, less exposed to failure. The Hagerstown plant has been building diesel engines for over 80 years. That institutional knowledge is inside every block. Fleet records show E7 trucks reaching 900,000 to 1.2 million miles. A Mack CH runs $15,000 to $40,000. Rebuild kit, $4,000 to $7,000. For construction, logging, or tanker work, it's nearly impossible to beat. The EPA's 2002 standards made EGR mandatory. Exhaust gas recirculation routes combustion gases back into the intake to cut NOx. It works for emissions, but it raises intake temperatures, pushes soot into the oil faster, adds thermal stress to cylinder heads, and introduces coolers and valves that fail in the field. The 2007 standards added DPF, particulate filters that trap soot and burn it off periodically, adding thermal cycling to every engine under those rules. The Detroit Series 60, the Cummins N14, and the Cat 3406E were the final, most refined expression of heavy-duty diesel before that complexity was layered on top. The EPA did not eliminate bad engines. It eliminated the best engines at the peak of what they could be. Last on the list and most undervalued, the Western Star 4900. Built in Kelowna, British Columbia, acquired by Daimler in 2000. Frame rails in extra-thick steel. Components rated conservatively because Western Star knew logging and oilfield operators would push past every limit. On paper, the 4900 was the default truck in British Columbia's logging industry for decades, conditions that would destroy most other machines. The survivors, with Detroit Series 60 or Cat 3406E power, are among the most durability-tested vehicles ever produced. Price range, $25,000 to $65,000. And here is the arbitrage. A 4900 with a documented 3406E sells 10 to 20% cheaper than a comparable Peterbilt 379 with the same engine, purely because of brand recognition. The mechanics are identical. The price is not. Before you buy any of these, there's a protocol. Skipping it is where people lose money. First, verify the engine serial number. For the Series 60, the prefix confirms series and year. Critical because post-2002 EGR engines are a different animal. For the N14, it confirms Select or Select Plus. For the 3406E, it separates electronic from mechanical. Second, send an oil sample to Blackstone Laboratories in Fort Wayne, Indiana. $35 reveals wear metals, coolant contamination, and fuel dilution. A 700,000-mile engine with a clean report beats a 400,000-mile engine with no history. Third, pull the full DTC history, not just active codes. Inactive codes show what the seller didn't tell you. Series 60 uses DDIC, N14 uses Insight, 3406E uses CAT-ET. 4 mistakes consistently cost buyers. 1. Confusing pre-EGR and post-EGR, Series 60. Production continued after 2002 with EGR added. Cooler failures are a documented problem. Check production date, not model year. 2. Buying on mileage instead of maintenance. A Series 60 at 400k miles with wrong oil and 25k mile intervals is worse than one at 900k with a real service history. 3. Ignoring the cooling system. Incorrect SCA levels cause cavitation erosion on the liners. Invisible outside, catastrophic inside. 4. Assuming pre-emissions means no electronics. DDIC, Select, and ADM need proper diagnostic tools. The rebuild versus replace decision is straightforward. The math makes it clear. A top-end rebuild covering head gaskets, injectors, and valve adjustment runs $3,000 to $8,000 and is almost always the right call. An in-frame rebuild, new sleeves, pistons, rings, and bearings in the chassis, runs $8,000 to $18,000 and makes sense when the frame is solid. A full out-of-frame rebuild, line board to factory spec with all new internals, runs $15,000 to $30,000. That is roughly 20% of a new 2024 Class 8 truck, and delivers an engine without EGR, DPF, DEF, or limp mode. Dealers won't walk you through this math. That's not an accident. TruckersReport.com and Facebook groups like Peterbilt 379, owners and Kenworth W900 enthusiasts carry real pricing data, regional mechanic recommendations, and sourcing for discontinued parts. Documentation is money. Keep a physical binder of every oil change, part, and service. A 379 with full records sells 20 to 40% more than a mechanically identical truck without them. Check your state's emissions exemption rules too. Many exempt vehicles over 25 years old. A 1998 Peterbilt 379 crossed that threshold in 2000.